Hi, ever wonder what it's like to work another profession or live in the underworld? Listen to unsuspecting riders give a 10 to 15 minute personal masterclass as I spontaneously interview them as they enter my taxi. I'm your host, Simon Rushton, and this is Taxi Chronicles. Morning. Yes, we're back with another episode, another rider. Today we've got a lovely lady in the car and she comes all the way from America across the pond. Atlanta, Georgia, where I've got family, and she's moved here with her husband and she's made a new life. She's been here for 18 months and she's going to tell us all about it and what made her come to that decision, and then how she persuaded her husband to come as well. So nice to meet you here today, Brianna. So tell us, first of all, what made you want to come to England?
Sure. So the funny thing is I've had only visited once for 3 days prior to this move, and I don't know, I thought it was a fun city with a lot of buzz, plenty to do, really kind people, and I remember I got a message on LinkedIn one day that was like, do you want to teach in England? And I, as most people would assume, it was spam. And then I got another one, and finally I was like, I'm just going to talk to these people. So it turned out it wasn't spam, it was real. I looked into the program, went through the process, got an interview with a school, got a job, and asked my husband, should we really do this?
Did you ask your husband before you responded to the email?
Once I realized it was real, I said, I think this is real. It's sponsored by the UK government. We should really think about this as a real possibility. And he was kind of like, I don't know if we should move internationally. What am I going to do for work? So there were a lot of question marks. And I was kind of like, well, let me just see if I get a job. And then we can think about it.
Yeah, it's true. So you can make a plan and then you don't get the job. But if you get the job, you can always reject it.
Exactly. So in March, let's see, what year was it? 2018, I got a job. And so we had to decide what we're going to do. And in 6 months, we moved. So it was pretty crazy.
Family and friends, what did they have to say?
So I think that was the most nerve-wracking part, was telling our parents. We're both very, very close with our families. And to our surprise, both of our moms were like, oh, you absolutely have to do it. I can't wait to come visit you.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. At least they got a place to stay now for free.
Exactly.
They come over yet?
So funny thing is, they were meant to come over last March and April. And so we kind of all know what was going on last March and April. So they haven't been able to come over, which has been tough. But I think it's still kind of this fun thing where we're all excited for when it does get to happen. And they've been really happy for us because despite a troubling year, we've actually had a really great time here.
And your dad, what does your dad say?
Yeah, I think my dad was a little bit more quiet. He was more like, okay, how long are you guys going to be gone?
Yeah, like, you're coming back, you do know that.
Exactly,
yeah.
And even still, when he talks to us, he's like, all right, like, are you guys going to stay until your visa's over? Are you going to extend your visa? So he's still a little bit like wants us closer to home, but he's really happy that we're getting to have travels and adventure while we're still like young.
So you've been sightseeing?
Yes.
What have you found very interesting in England?
Oh, that's a good question. I guess compared to the US, I find that we're just like healthier as a baseline. Like everyone kind of keeps healthy by working out here.
Don't be deceived because everyone's jogging. They're jogging because Boris says if you're outside, you've got to jog.
That's true. You have to be active if you're outdoors. That's fair. But even I feel like not having a car, this is the first time since I was 16 that I haven't been driving. And just walking most places. And I don't know, I really like that pace of life. Also, I'm trying to think of things that are kind of funny to us. Well, I'm a teacher, and that's been a big adjustment. The school system's completely different here.
No guns?
Yeah, no guns, which I think we prefer, personally. That's different. And I don't know, I actually think people are really, really kind here, which sometimes when I tell that to my American friends, they're like, really? And I'm like, yeah. You know, if you drop something on the street, someone will tap you on the shoulder and give it back to you. People are just actually very sweet, I have to say.
Why are your friends so surprised?
I think the misconception maybe is that Americans are very, very sweet, which I think they are. We are quite hospitable people, especially I'm from the southern US, and so that's kind of what we're known for. But I find that there's just a different level of decency here.
I've never got that impression that Americans are sweet. I always got the impression that Americans have to have their way.
Oh, yeah, I could see it that way.
I've never got the sweet element. You know, mind you, it's different areas, different things in America.
Absolutely.
Maybe the southern are more hospitable.
Yeah.
But like I said, New York was a surprise, but they're meant to be more aggressive.
Right.
And I would say the California are more fake.
Yeah, yeah.
They make out they're your friend or really nice, but really they're
Just like,
envious or jealous.
Yeah, definitely superficial for sure.
And stuff. So, teaching in schools.
Sure.
What was the differences that you found, apart from obviously the weapons, the metal detectors?
So everything. It's so funny, like talking to my head teacher, she's asked me the same thing. I'm like, literally everything. We don't have timetables. As a teacher, I would teach the same classes every day, which means I saw the same groups of students every day, get to build a really good relationship with them. Where here, I teach all different types of topics every day to different groups of students. So I teach year 7 through 13, chemistry, physics, and biology. And so it was quite an adjustment, kind of like wrapping my head around the schedule here. And then in general, there's no such thing as GCSEs in the US. There's no such thing as A-levels. So I've had to kind of fix my brain of how to prepare students in a system that I've never gone through before.
What's the equivalent then of the GCSEs and A-levels?
So for GCSEs, every state has a state assessment, which would be similar to a GCSE, but it's not cumulative over multiple years. It's just that year, that course. So for example, you take biology in 1 year, and then you take the biology assessment. That's it. For A-levels, we have what's called...
And then you leave school?
No, so it's like every year, let's say... Year 9, you have a biology assessment and a maths assessment, and then in year 10, you have an English assessment and also we have no geography, so it's just history.
That explains a lot. That explains a lot, because 75% of you don't have passports.
Yeah.
That explains a lot.
Geography doesn't exist as a course in the US. So just like things like that, from huge structural changes to like very small things, it's completely different, and it's exciting though. It's definitely challenged me as a teacher in great ways.
What would you say are some things? Obviously, America, you think America will be better at, as in education system.
Sure.
And some things are British, you may think, or English are better.
Yeah.
What would you say? What have you noticed that you think we could learn from that, or they can learn from us? What would you say?
Absolutely. I think one of the things they can learn from you all, so Americans can learn from the English or the British, is I think that there's a better focus on like healthy lifestyle and all students being involved in sports. I'm a big sports person. I love watching sports. I love going to my students' games. So that's something I've missed out on. But I also like that all of my students are somehow involved in some type of extracurricular activity, mostly because it's not extracurricular. It's just built into their day. They can do them during their break times. They can do them during their lunch times.
So in America, they don't have an emphasis on sports?
There is, but it's much more like elite, meaning if you are very highly skilled, you get on the team, like we have tryouts.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And then there are different levels, and obviously everybody wants to be in the top level, which would be like varsity, and you travel and compete, and so the competition is very intense, but it's few people
get left on the wayside.
Exactly.
That's where the mindset of being a winner or a loser comes
Yes,
from.
yes.
Okay, you made the team, you're a winner. You didn't, you were a loser.
Yes.
Okay.
So the flip side of that, the thing that I think I wish that I could bring over from the US here into the education system is you have so much more autonomy and options in the US, and you don't have to decide what your courses are going to be or what you want to study as young. So here, right after GCSE, you essentially decide what you want to study for A-levels, and then when you go on, that kind of determines what you can study at a university level or in college. Where in the US, you can kind of pick and choose what you want to study when you want to. You ask, like, what's the equivalent of A-levels? We have AP. You can start taking AP classes as early as, like, year 9.
What age group is that?
So that would be, like, 14, 15. And you can decide, so, like, let's say I'm really good at science. I want to take the A-level equivalent in science, but I am not so keen on history, for example. And so I'm going to stay at essentially like my grade level in history. So it's much more customizable. And even once you get into university, you can change your major. You can take a combination of classes. You can take classes you just want to take for fun. So there's I think a bigger emphasis on kind of like choose your own path.
So basically, the major is the ultimate goal.
Yes.
And the topics or subjects are just different things that you're interested in.
Yeah. And there's requirements, of course, of what you need to take to get your degree, but there's also a lot of flexibility within that.
Have you ever considered being on the educational board, government-wise, for England, but because your skills of teaching in both
right.
would be greatly, valuable.
Sure.
And you could, do you see what I mean? I could see you in a position in government, on the education, like I said, on the education, where you share your experience and you give advice of why we should adapt certain things and what we... Do you see what I mean?
Sure, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think long term, that's something that I would definitely be interested in, either here or in the US. I think all school systems should be learning from other school systems and taking the best practices. And I definitely think teachers should be kind of at the table on those decisions and informing what do these practices actually look like in the classroom. So I'm a huge proponent of that, of teachers kind of being, having a seat at the table when, the Department of Education is making some of these decisions that impact kids, because we see them every day.
But I would have thought, ideally, they would only employ ex-teachers, probably teachers with a minimum of 10 years. Do you see what I mean? Because it's in the trenches job. You want someone who knows, because there's also a culture difference, correct me if I'm wrong.
Absolutely.
So what would you say the culture differences are?
Gosh, this one's tricky, because I would say overall kids are kids. But I mean, one of the things that shocked me is I teach a lesson and kids thank me at the end. They'll say, "Thank you, miss." And it still catches me off guard. Even on Google Classroom, my students always leave the classroom by saying, "Thank you for the lesson." That would never happen in the US.
Are you doing private? Do you do private school?
No, I work at a state school. So I think that level of respect and decency, not saying that I haven't had amazing students and parents in the US and who are truly thankful and work hard, but there's just a different, culture is the best word. There's a different level of appreciation, for a lesson. And I mean, I've had some students that are, school's not their favorite, and I still feel like when you connect with them, they say thank you. And I don't know if that's just here or maybe just my experience.
But in the British culture, manners is everything.
Yes.
So thank you, please, no thank you. You see what I mean?
Yes.
So even if you're upset, you still meant to have manners.
Exactly.
And I don't know, obviously, about America, but it's just, it's how I've been brought up.
Absolutely. I think I have too. So again, in southern US, we're definitely more proper, but I think it's in terms of manners, but I think it's the ways that it shows up differently. So for example, I'm very sensitive to foul language, if that makes sense. Yeah, and I learned early on that we do not have the same curse words, essentially. So, for example, a student saying hell, that would be a bad word in the US, where I've definitely had a student say, you know, like, what the hell to another student. And I think my TA was like, are you okay? Because I was looking at them like, you can't say that.
I never thought of that.
So yeah, it's really funny, the kinds of things that, like, culturally are different, you know, there's different sensitivities.
Yeah.
But I would say, like you said, the manners is definitely at a different level here.
I hear you. So tell us, what made you want to get into the science?
Yeah, so I studied public health and medicine when I was in university, but I also studied international development. So kind of, you asked earlier if I would want to go into government. That was my original goal, is I wanted to work in development, more in the public health side of things. But as I learned more in university, I realized a big way that you can impact public health is kids and how they show up at school, and the types of education and the types of programming that's available to them, and how that affects society. And it's fascinating to me. And then I got in classrooms and started working with kids, and I was like, I love this. And then as I did more research, I realized there's not enough people who look like me, so I'm African-American woman, that teach science. So I said, if I'm going to do this, I want to teach science. And I've been doing it for 6 years. So.
Okay, that's good. Do you see yourself as somebody who could adapt to the British life, that you could live here indefinitely, or?
Absolutely. It's been kind of funny, and I think that's why my dad's always like, so are you guys going to come back? Is we really do love it here. We like the pace of life. We love and when I say that, this is the first time ever that my husband has had even close to the same amount of holiday time as me.
Yeah, you don't have no. You 2 weeks a year. Yep. I can relieve of that.
14 days. He has, you know.
And we have the Queen's birthday.
Exactly. So last Christmas was the first time he took off my full, like, winter break, Christmas break, ever. We've never been able to spend. Usually he just has Christmas Eve and Christmas off, and then, you know, depending on where it falls, that time between Christmas and New Year's, possibly. So it's going to be really hard to ever give that up. The work-life balance, we both consider ourselves really hard workers, and we give our all and more to our jobs because we love what we do. Both of us were lucky in that respect. But we've had a taste of what it feels like to have a true balance. It would be hard.
Have you encouraged friends or family to come over to live here?
Yes, yeah.
What did they say?
I think they're just nervous.
Watch you first.
Yeah,
like,
they're nervous about it.
We'll watch you. See what happens with you first.
Exactly.
So that's interesting, because with the time factor, though, time is why you work, because you want to have a good time with your family. And so if you don't get any time, I can see how that's a big hard factor to go back to having 2 weeks off.
Exactly.
And the fact is also, you can go to Paris, you can go to Spain, Germany, all these places around the world, even the Far East, quite easily.
Yep. So it's really difficult. We've been able to take advantage, you know, of some of those holidays before kind of lockdown happened, and I really don't know if I could imagine going back to not having that time to spend with my family. So, yeah.
Well, thanks for the interview. The last question I'm going to ask you is, what's the impact you want to have on the world?
Oh, wow. That's a big question. I think my impact that I would like to have is to know that every day that I went to work, I worked towards making the world maybe a little bit better, impacting a classroom of kids' lives, that they could go out and increase my impact.
And so one more question I forgot. If you could do it all again, would you? And would you do it anything different?
I would do it again, and I don't think I would do anything differently.
That means you're a true, happy, contented person.
Thanks.
I appreciate that, and we wish you well.
Sure.
We hope you liked that interview. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to get the latest daily episode. Ever considered investing in the continent with the fastest growing economy and population on Earth? The same continent that holds 30% of the world's known natural resources? Then listen to our sister podcast, Africa Investor Stories, where you will hear real investors with real stories from around the world share their experience of investing in Africa. We post Monday and Thursday at 10 a.m.